Hi, I'm Sherry from Liberty Mission Farms. Today I'm going to show you how we are saving money on our chicken feed as well as increasing its nutrition by using a fermentation process. About fermenting chicken feed, and why would we want to do that? Well, we feed our chickens an organic soy-free grain, and it's a mix just for laying hens. Although our chickens are out on pasture and they're getting a lot of bugs and a lot of grass and legumes and that sort of thing, they're just not getting quite enough protein on just that all the time. So they need some supplement. And this will depend on a lot of factors: the time of year, how much growth there is, how long they've been on a particular pasture before they get moved to the next one. So we kind of watch how their egg production is and watch them to know about how much feed they're going to need. But when we do give them feed, we want to make sure that we're giving them the highest nutrition that we can, as well as the smallest amount of feed that we can, because that saves us a lot of money. And it also provides them better nutrition, of course. So we're using an organic feed that's whole grains and cracked grains along with some minerals. And grains of all kinds in nature have a protective shell over them, a hard coating. And that coating is meant to protect the seed so that it could lie around all winter long. And then in the springtime, when the rains come and the ground becomes wet, it softens that seed so that it enables it to sprout. It also enables some of that nutrition to come out. So we're mimicking what goes on in nature by doing this fermentation process. And what I have here is 3 buckets. It takes about 24 hours to get a fermentation going. And this first bucket represents today's feed. So this feed has just been put in here this morning. We put in about the amount that we typically need to feed our hens. So that is usually around that is usually around a quarter pound. That's a good place to start, but depending upon your situation and how much forage they have, you may need more feed than that. But we're starting with that amount, and we run anywhere from 50 to 150 hens, so you may not want to do this in such a large quantities as we are. But for what we're doing, we put in about a quarter cup of feed per hen into this first bucket, and then we fill the bucket with water so that the feed is completely covered. You want to make sure the water is always covering the feed. After 24 hours, we'll start to see some bubbling up at the top, and that's the fermentation process getting started. A lot of times the seed will soak up a lot of water. If you ever soak dry beans, you see they soak up a lot of water. You might have to come back to it and then add more water to them, because you want to make sure the water stays above all the time so you don't get mold or bacteria, other growth that you don't want. So we'll check on it throughout the day if we need to and adjust to get the idea of how much water we're going to need to keep the grain under the water all the time. And then the second bucket has been here for the full 24 hours. This is yesterday's bucket that we filled up. So we've taken whatever was in this bucket has been poured into this bucket, and then this one filled. And then on the third day, whatever's in this bucket is poured into this bucket, which is our third day. So by then, the fermentation process is going really pretty good. Each time we pour one bucket into the next bucket for the day, we are aerating it and keeping that fermentation process going. And as it ferments, we'll see more and more bubbling coming up to the top. When we get down to this last bucket, we pour it into a bucket on the ground, which I'll show you in a minute, which has holes and a strainer in the bottom that allows all of that liquid to drain out, so the feed can drain out a little bit, and then that bucket then goes out to the field to feed the chickens for that day. So we're always about 4 days ahead. The food that's in here will be fed to the hens in 4 days. So if you're using a mash or something like that, it might not work as well for that kind of grain. You want whole or cracked grains. We've never really tried it with a mash. I think it might just be pretty messy, and I don't know how well that would work. But if you're using whole or cracked grains, or even if you're using chicken scratch and cracked corn, it works well for that. There's not a lot of nutrition in corn, but when you put it through this fermentation process, you are able to extract out more nutrients from it, giving those chickens a little bit of extra protein and vitamins and minerals that they need. Now, to get this process started a little bit quicker, one thing you can also do is take some of the liquid from this third bucket and just a little scoop of it and pour it into the first bucket. That fermentation process that started over here will help get this bucket started a little bit faster on that same process and drawing out those nutrients. And then what you're getting is a probiotic food as well. So you're getting the nutrients and you're getting the good probiotics that are great for the immune system. Now down here is our bucket that will be fed to the chickens today. It's just starting to drain. It's not completely drained, but you can kind of see the grains there starting to drain out the bottom, and all the grains have sort of kind of puffed up. They've absorbed some of that liquid, and they're a good fermented grain now that once they've drained off, they'll go right out there to the field, and the chickens just love it. They really love this food, and one of the ways we can tell if they're getting enough or not is by their egg production. That's what you'll really want to watch, is how are they doing, and you may have to adjust how much you're feeding them depending on a lot of factors. But that's the food that's ready to go out. It should be done draining by this evening, and they'll be ready to go out to the field. So that's really all there is to fermenting your chicken feed, and by doing so you're going to save some money on the amount of feed. You have to buy less feed. You're increasing the nutrition, and you're giving the chickens a natural probiotic that you've grown through this fermentation process, which is great for their immune system. So if you decide to use this, you can do it on a smaller scale with smaller buckets, just for the number of hens that you have. But if you do this, watch them. So how is their egg production? Do they act like they're starving when you bring the food out? So there's just a lot of factors there. But if the egg production is good, they're getting enough feed, and then you can monitor it just by watching and observing their eating habits and how much you think that they'll need. And egg production is a good indicator of that. So that's really all there is to it. If you give it a try, let us know in the comments how it works for you.